everything that's going on in the news, then a friend of the show, always love having him on. He's a former GOP candidate for president. Great podcast, the FSilencePodcast.com. Definitely check that out. That would be former Congressman of Illinois, Joe Walsh. Joe, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
Hey, guys. Always good to be with you. What's going on? Nothing, right?
Yeah, just a little bit. Hey, let me start out by asking you about this, because the last segment we probably took 100 phone calls about this couple, the McCloskeys, who go out there in the front of their home and point an AR-15 at these Black Lives Matter protesters. And my thought on it, Joe, is that, listen, while maybe the protesters shouldn't have been on that street because it was private property, they weren't putting this couple in harm's way as far as their lives in jeopardy. What do you make of this?
It's such a perfect test for. It's like a Twitter thing. Look. They in America, you have a right to defend. Use a gun to defend yourself and your family and your property. Yeah, you're right. Those people were just protesters. That couple that had the guns there, they ought to undergo some firearm training, because they didn't look like they knew what the hell they were doing, and they should have just stayed inside.
Agree. I could not agree with you more. All right, let's move on to your favorite topic, which is Donald Trump. A lot to get to with him. Let's start out with this. Before we get to the issue of Russia and the troops, which is a huge topic, biggest topic right now circulating on social media, I want to start with this. What do you make of the President of the United States, Joe, retweeting one of his supporters screaming out white power? What do you make of that?
He's either a racist or he's an idiot, or who doesn't pay attention. Take your pick. It's both. Look, again, the bigger story here is no other president, and this guy doesn't do anything. To me, that's the big story. He's the laziest SOB we've ever had in the White House. All he does is watch TV and tweet. No other president, Republican or a Democrat, would spend time scrolling through Twitter to find tweets that they can retweet. It's all he does. Yeah, he's a bad, horrible guy. He is a racist. He's a bigot. He's an idiot. He's all of that. But, my God, he doesn't do anything but watch TV and tweet.
What would you do, Joe? And I agree with you. What would you do, Joe, if you were Kayleigh, the White House press secretary? You're asked these questions, right? And Kayleigh responds basically by saying, oh, well, he took it down. We asked him to take it down. He didn't hear one of his supporters saying white power. And now we hear reports, Joe, that when Donald Trump was on the golf course, his advisors were trying to get in touch with him. He didn't have his phone on him. They were begging and pleading with him to delete this tweet. It took a couple hours. I mean, what do you make of the administration's response and excuses for this president?
Well, the two things that we know for certain are this. Donald Trump lies as he breathes. He always has. And if you work for Donald Trump, you have to lie for Donald Trump all the time. It is a job requirement. They all do it. I served with people who worked with Trump, Pompeo, Mulvaney. These are good guys. I know them well, but they know what the drill is. When you work for Trump, you have to lie for him. And that's what Kayleigh McEnany does every day of the week.
It's a difficult job, that's for sure. Let's move on to something that is more important than anything we've discussed so far, and that is this Russia report, right? This report with Russia, a bounty on the heads of U.S. troops. And I want to play you a little bit of audio before I get your opinion on this story, because Fox and Friends, Ainsley Airhead, as I like to call her, and Steve Douchey, as I like to call him, those are my nicknames for both of them. Listen to this, Joe. Listen to the way they defend Donald Trump not reading his intelligence reports on Russia. Have a listen to this.
According to the New York Times, it was in his presidential daily briefing on February 27th.
But he does. All presidents don't read all of their briefings.
Right. A guy comes in and essentially tells the president what is in it. And so it might have been printed in it. Doesn't mean he actually heard about it. Because you've got to figure, if the president had heard that was going on, he would have done something about it.
I mean, listen to these two idiots on Fox and Friends. Joe, what do you make of that?
3 words, guys. Bless their hearts. I mean, bless their hearts. It's interesting because, look, Trump's going south, and even his numbers are going down. And you're even beginning to see people in my old world of conservative media beginning to change their tune a little bit. And look, Ainsley and those Fox and Friends folks, they're just as silly and as dumb and as irrelevant as can be. But even like Sean Hannity last night, 3.5 months later said, you know what, masks work. You ought to wear a mask. So they're all changing their tune a little bit because Trump is in a lot of trouble politically.
There's no question he's in a ton of trouble politically. I want to play you a little bit of audio. You might get a kick out of this or you might cry, one or the other. But on February 27th, we're learning that this was one of the days where Donald Trump was supposed to be briefed or was briefed on this issue with the troop situation. I want you to listen to what Donald Trump decided to do on this day instead of apparently reading his intelligence briefing. He was spending some time with Diamond and Silk in the White House. Yeah, exactly. Have a listen to this.
We need somebody that's not going to go along just to get along with some smooth edges. We need somebody that don't have a problem with going toe-to-toe against the status quo.
That's right.
And that's
All right, cut it. I can't take any more of those two. Joe, this is what Donald Trump was doing on a day that he was allegedly briefed on the situation with the troop situation. That's what the president was doing. What do you make of that?
So here's the problem. Like you and I, we could spend hours every day laughing at Trump and making fun of him and mocking him because it's so easy to do. This Russia bounty story, though, it's a big story, but it's just the latest piece of evidence that, and again, I use this word purposely. Other people have. I've been using it for a long time. Donald Trump is a traitor. In the broadest sense of the world, he is a traitor. He has betrayed this country repeatedly. I mean, ever since he ran for president. Back in 2016, he's running for president, and he's encouraging Russia to screw with our elections. That's a betrayal. He's betrayed the country every step along the way, allowing Russia to put a bounty on our soldiers' heads and not doing a damn thing about it is a betrayal. He's a traitor.
I agree with you, and now the question is, what does Vladimir Putin have on this guy? Do you think we would see it if Donald Trump released his tax returns, which, by the way, hasn't released them yet. We probably will never see them. What the hell does Vladimir Putin and Russia have on this guy? I mean, I guess it's all speculation at this point, but it's got to be something, right?
But I think he's got something. I think you're right. I think, and I tweeted that out last night, before I die, I want to know what Putin had on Trump. I think it is financial. I think we're going to find out that Russian money, Russian oligarch, corrupt Russian mob money has propped up Trump the last 15 years. Because remember, outside of Deutsche Bank, and a lot of that money was Russian money, no American bank would give him money in the last 20 years. So I think that's what it is. And I think that would come out with some of his tax returns. We got to whoop his ass, period, in November.
I agree. I couldn't agree with you more. Okay, let's move on to this monument subject. I'm sure you have an opinion on that. My thought is this: I certainly wouldn't want an Adolf Hitler statue in my backyard or in the state that I live in or the city that I live in. And I can understand where these people are coming from when it comes to some of these monuments. I don't think we should be praising or looking up to anyone that owns slaves. At the same time, I don't think we should take it, too far. And I think in some situations they're taking it a little bit too far. And I don't support graffiti and the public taking down these monuments because that is a crime, quite frankly. Where are your thoughts on this whole monument situation?
Probably where you are. There's a right and a wrong way to do it. The city of Charleston, South Carolina, voted last week to take down a statue of a Confederate general. That's the way it should be done. The state of Mississippi over the weekend voted to change their flag, their state flag. That's the right way to do it. You can't tear down statues and monuments. The other thing I'd say is, again, we're so ignorant of history. Donald Trump is an idiot. He doesn't frickin' know history. But too many of these people on the left don't either. And if you can't see the difference between Thomas Jefferson and Jefferson Davis, you're an idiot. There's a big difference, and we've got to appreciate that more.
I agree, and I think it needs to be a case-by-case basis, and I think it needs to be voted on. And yes, the way some people are going about it is wrong. But don't you find it interesting, the anger and all the effort that Donald Trump puts into some of these people that are taking down these monuments? And that's what he chooses to do. He chooses to retweet, like we spoke about, this couple that points an AR-15 at protesters. That's where he decides to put his anger towards. yet he puts little to no effort into actual racial injustice in this country and the reason why these Black Lives Matter protests are going on to begin with.
He's all he's got, all Trump and his people and Hannity, all they got is fear. If you turn on Fox News every night, which I do sometimes because I have to, all they're trying to do is just scare the hell out of their audience. It's all Donald Trump's trying to do. He will run on the fact that if you don't watch it, black people are going to knock on your front door with guns. He's trying to scare the hell out of his base. That's all he's got. And I don't think it's going to be nearly enough to win. I think decency will overcome fear in November.
Joe, one of the reasons we love having you on is because, and it's really important to mention this, you are a conservative Republican from the heartland, and you've turned on Donald Trump because you've seen him for what he is. And you've proven that a conservative Republican can go against Donald Trump and still be a conservative. And we love that about you. So let me ask you about the 2020 election. Okay, John Bolton said, look, I'm a conservative Republican. I'm going to write a candidate in. I'm not going to vote for Biden because it goes against what I believe, but I'm going to write somebody in. Where do you fall? Are you in that camp, or are you going to vote for Biden?
No, God knows. Screw Bolton. Look, here's the deal. If you believe, as I believe, that Donald Trump is unfit to be president, and you don't then vote for the only person who can beat him, then you really don't believe Donald Trump is unfit. There's only one guy who can beat Trump. That's the Democratic nominee. When I got out of the race in February, I said, Bernie Sanders, bring it on. I'll support whoever the Democrat is. Doesn't matter to me. Trump's an existential threat. We all have – this is one of those weird times in American history where a crazy conservative like me has got to hold hands with liberals, and we have to remove the threat, and we all have to support the Democratic nominee.
He is Joe Walsh, former GOP candidate for president, also a former congressman in Illinois. Great podcast, too, fsilencepodcast.com. Joe, let's talk a little bit about the coronavirus now. It's been a little while since you've been on. Let's talk a little bit about that. So living here in Las Vegas, I said that they opened up the Strip way too early. You had DeSantis, you had Florida, Texas, Republican governors that were bragging about their record, about the low cases. Now all of a sudden they are silenced. And they're halting the reopening phases. In fact, in some cases, like in Arizona, they're closing down all the bars and restaurants, so on and so forth. Yeah. So what would you say to all the people out there that wanted, many Republicans, by the way, that wanted the economy started up and wanted it reopened, and now it appears, and I hope I'm wrong, but it appears in the next month or so we could see the economy shut down again?
Wear a damn mask. Period. If we had done that from the beginning, I think Dr. Fauci said that today, actually, up on Capitol Hill, that wearing a mask and social distancing, all the things we were supposed to do from the start, we do those things to help us reopen as quickly as possible. But we've had way too many Americans who haven't done what they're supposed to do, and now when it comes to this virus, guys, we are the laughing stock of the world. And by the way, this is all on Trump. I mean, we are living through a once-in-a-lifetime natural disaster without anybody at home in the White House. Think about that. He won't wear a mask. He's discouraged people from wearing a mask. There's blood on his hands. We've got no leadership from Washington.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about Mike Pence for a second, because he wants to pray this virus away more than anything else. But Mike Pence, right, the other day, he's talking tough on wearing a mask. And then a day earlier, you can't make this stuff up, Joe, he's sitting in a church, and he's wearing a mask, but an entire choir of like 40 or 50 people standing right next to each other not wearing masks. I mean, what is going on here? Well, let's just focus on Pence for a second. I mean, what is going on with this guy, the head of the entire task force?
Look, I know Mike Pence well. I served with him in Congress. I've always considered him to be a decent man. He made a bet. He sold his soul to the devil. Mike Pence wants to be president. And so he figured if I become vice president, that's a really good path to becoming president. He forgot one thing, and that's that he became Donald Trump's vice president. And so he's down on his knees every single day, just prostrating himself in front of Trump. And I think because of that, I think Pence made a bad bet. He'll never become president because now he's too closely dirtied by and tied to Trump.
I agree with you 100%, and I don't think he's the only one that's done that.
No.
I couldn't agree with you more. Let's go back to Biden for a second. So Joe Biden just announced in a press conference that he will be picking his vice presidential pick several weeks before the convention. Joe, I said 6 months ago, I said Kamala Harris. I think she's the one to do it. I think if he picked Michelle Obama, I don't think she would ever want to be the vice president, but if he picked her, I think that would be a slam dunk. I'm going with Kamala Harris. I'm sticking by my guns. Who do you think he picks as his vice president?
I think I'm with you. I thought Kamala Harris from the beginning as well. I do think he will end up picking a black woman, which I think is probably a really smart move right now at this time. But, you know, I'm not where Elizabeth Warren is politically. I'm on the other extreme, but she's really a quality politician. And Elizabeth Warren would get a lot of excitement from the Democratic base. And when you poll African-American voters in America, Elizabeth Warren polls as well with them as Kamala does. So I think it'll probably be Harris, but I think Warren for Biden would be a really good pick too.
Yeah, I think so. I think all the above there. I think either of those would work. So here's my concern, Joe, and you can tell me if you agree or not. My concern is Joe Biden up there on the stage debating Donald Trump. Now, listen, obviously Joe Biden is far more intelligent, far more experienced, but I think a lot of Americans possibly do not want to hear about policy. Sadly, they enjoy the Donald Trump insults. And I don't think Joe Biden is going to go there. And there's two ways to go about it, right, Joe? You could either say, I'm going to stay above the fray and I'm going to be classy and talk policy, which is what Hillary Clinton tried to do, or go down in the dumps with Trump and insult him, because certainly there's a lot of material there. You know Trump is going to go after Biden. You know Trump is going to go after his son. You know Trump is going to go after, some of the things that maybe the gaffes, the Joe Biden gaffes. That is my concern. Joe Biden is not the same Joe Biden he was 10 years ago,
right,
maybe even 5 years ago. He's not as sharp as he was. Is he far more intelligent? Absolutely. Is he overqualified compared to Trump? Absolutely. I'm just concerned that Joe Biden is not as fast on his feet. One thing I will say about Trump, in these debates, he's very quick-witted, and he goes with the insults and the cheap shots. That's what pushed him, I believe, to be the president of the United States. Hillary decided to take the high road. What do you think the approach should be for Joe Biden if you were one of his advisors going into one of these debates?
Sure, it's funny, and I learned this. I mean, having run for office and served, you just got to be yourself. When people try to be somebody they're not, they always get in trouble. Joe Biden is old, and he's lost a step. So just be that. The one thing about Biden is he's a really nice guy. And look, Hillary Clinton, had qualifications out the wazoo. Nobody is ever going to say Hillary Clinton was likable. She wasn't. Joe Biden is very likable. So I think we're already seeing this in the polls. Trump's hits at Biden are not sticking. They're not resonating because most people deep down know he's a nice guy. If I'm Joe Biden and I'm on a stage with Donald Trump, I'm just going to be the nice old guy I am. And yeah, sure, I've lost a step, but I'm a decent guy and you're a jackass, and just play that all the way through.
I agree, Joe, and to what you're talking about, even I publicly have not said yet whether I was going to vote for Joe Biden or not. I'm not voting for Donald Trump. I wanted to wait until he chose a vice president. I changed my mind last night, and maybe I waited too long to do it, but the reason why I did is because I saw a video that surfaced, I don't know if you saw this, of Joe Biden before he became the vice president under Barack Obama. I saw a video of him in his home city, and it was a video of him giving money to a homeless person. I think it was in front of him. Yeah, in front of a movie theater. They spoke for 5 minutes. He gave information to this homeless person who was a vet about how to get paid living because he was a vet. They spoke for a while. He gave this person money. Joe Biden was standing there by himself. There was nobody around him. He had no idea he was being videoed by a bystander. And I saw that moment of empathy, and that's the thing about Joe Biden that I admire the most. He's not perfect. He's not the perfect candidate. But the man has empathy. I believe he cares about people. I'll give you another example, Joe. He went to the George Floyd family, he and his wife. They spent an hour and a half, 2 hours with that family. His wife offered to give them grief counseling. He spoke about his loss and how to deal with grief. What does Donald Trump do? He has a 5-minute conversation with the family, the George Floyd family, and they say he wouldn't shut up and he wouldn't let them talk. I said enough is enough already. I don't care who Joe Biden picks as his vice president, I'm going to support this man because I can't stand Donald Trump.
You nailed it. I think America in November just wants somebody in the White House who's capable of just basic human decency. It's like we want to just catch our breath for 4 years because we've had an absolute utter ass in the White House. And Biden's going to benefit from that. I think he'll only serve one term. And by the way, I think Biden should tell the American people, I'm only going to serve one term. And it's going to be one term of just decency and basic human compassion. And I think that's what America needs.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. We have to have a little fun here. I have to ask you a little bit about this because, as you know, the show Who is America, Sacha Baron Cohen, you were punked on that show, and it was a funny moment. Yes, you were. Sacha Baron Cohen is back in the news again. I don't know if you heard this story, Joe. It's absolutely hilarious. But apparently there was this conservative get-together, I guess you could call it, a bunch of conservatives and a bunch of
militia group.
Yeah, militia group. So Sacha Baron Cohen is disguised. He gets up there on a stage, and he starts singing some offensive lyrics saying, give Obama the Wuhan virus, and the crowd is singing along to the lyrics, chop up the WHO like the Saudis do, and these Republicans are singing along to it, these racist lyrics, and then he gets chased out, and he leaves in an ambulance, and you got these Republicans that were exposed for being racist fools. The lyrics saying, give Obama the Wuhan flu. What do you make of that? Because you were one of those guys.
They never realized it was him?
No, because he was disguised, just like he was disguised with you, my understanding.
No, a few people caught on.
After a while, a few people caught on.
And then I don't know if they knew it was Sacha or if they just knew they were being duped.
Yeah.
Right.
But Brian's right. For a lot of the video, they were clapping and cheering and singing along to these lyrics.
So what do you make of that? You were one of those people that experienced being duped. So what do you say to that?
He got me great, no doubt about it. No, look, it reminds us, and I know we're seeing it now because Trump's the president, so we see all the crazies. There are crazies on the far right. There are crazies on both extremes. The crazies on the far right are in our face a lot now because Trump has emboldened them to come out and say ugly, racist things. And look, not knowing Sacha Baron Cohen, I think it's great that this kind of crap is exposed and laughed at because it should be laughed at.
I could not agree with you more. I'm a big fan of Sacha Baron Cohen, and that's what he does. He exposes the idiots and the racists out there.
I'm not a fan of his anymore. I'm not a fan of him.
He got you, but you know what? Yeah, he didn't embarrass you like he embarrassed others, that's for sure.
And, Joe, we talked about it. We had a whole conversation last time you were on, or maybe the time before, and you laughed it off. You thought it was funny.
Of course.
Oh, God.
Well, of course. Well, Joe, I will say this. I'm a big fan of your podcast, the F Silence podcast. I just want to know, when am I going to be invited on your show?
Hey, consider that done. Done.
I'm going to hold you to that, my friend.
Hold me to that. Let's stay in touch, and we'll get something scheduled. I love it.
Brian is a video poker expert, if that's what you're looking for.
That is true. We could do a segment on compulsive gambling. Yeah, we could do that. But no, Joe, in all seriousness, Joe, I'd love to come on your show, and I always appreciate your perspective. You're the best, my friend. Thank you so much. Stay safe, okay?
Thanks, guys. Enjoy. Thanks, guys.
All right. Appreciate it. That is Joe Walsh, the former GOP candidate for president. Conservative, who is certainly not a Donald Trump supporter. I love his candidness. I love his honesty. He's made some mistakes in his past. He's put some tweets out there that he's not certainly not proud of, but he's apologized for it, and something that a lot of people in politics do not do. I do appreciate Joe Walsh a lot for his honesty.
He literally, for those who don't know his bio, he literally helped get Trump elected in 2016.
Yeah.
A Tea Party Republican, a conservative Republican who changed his mind once he saw what Trump was all about in the White House.